What is going on, guys? Matt Downs with Daily Grind Fantasy Sports here to give you the edge for this Panthers versus Texans matchup on DraftKings. Cannot wait to break it down. If you guys are brand new to this channel, we provide both free and paid content for all daily fantasy sports across all sports. If you could please show your support by hitting that subscribe button, notification bell, and of course smashing that like button for all of our future NFL content. If you would like to know more about becoming a better DFS player and taking down that big GPP, head over to www.dgfantasy.com. On dgfantasy.com, we give you cheat sheets for every major sport, along with ownership projections, actual projections, and strategy for every single slate. We also cover optimal cash plays as well as preferred GPP plays and stacks for specific contest sizes. We do the dirty work for you. We are also currently partnered with Fantasy Cruncher, the best optimizer in the industry. When signing up for our $30 package, you also get a $20 credit to use towards any Fantasy Cruncher product. We provide the best value in the industry. And now let's go ahead and dive right into this NFL Showdown slate between, by the way, TJ, this is a great matchup we have here, between the Carolina Panthers and Houston Texans. All right, let me give you some stats here on what Vegas thinks of this fantastic matchup here. Carolina is favored by 8 points. This is at Houston, keep in mind. We have Mills playing QB, not Tyrod Taylor, by the way. So the overall team or game total is at a 43. Right now, Houston's projected to score 19.5 points, and Carolina is projected to score 25.5. That's all I have to say. We should end the video now. No, we should talk about this amazing matchup, TJ. Starting out, let's please start out with the Panthers before I fall asleep. Panthers. We are starting out at the quarterback position. We have Sam Darnold here at 11-2. I think that's strictly the matchup. I don't think you'll ever see his price tag this high on any other showdown slate. But given the matchup, given the fact that they're projected to score 26 points, TJ, is this a cash quarterback?
Yeah, I think so. Matt, real quick though.
Sure.
Just a quick update. Texans actually opened up at 18.25 is what I'm seeing as a team total.
Oh, I see 17.5 now. Yep, you're right.
I have them at 17.75.
I do apologize.
80% of the bets right now are coming at Carolina -7. Why the line has 2 minus. And like you said, that 43.5 over under is pretty steep. That's a lot of points there between these two squads. But yeah, I mean, I think you can go to Sam Darnold here. Obviously, Matt at 11-2. He's the second highest owned that we do have currently on the slate. You know, normally when you're building lineups, I think trying to get in both quarterbacks is something that you really want to try and do. But like, I don't know if I trust Davis Mills.
No.
At 8,400. So if I'm taking Sam Darnold, the quarterback, like, yeah, I'm cool with that.
I will say
good against the Saints. Sorry, just looked good against the Saints. Got the win against his Jets. So yeah, I don't hate it.
Yeah, I don't hate it either. And I want to start out by I just want to talk about like this showdown slate as a whole, because it's going to be very interesting. Because in terms of strategy here, like you're looking at DJ Moore. I know I'm jumping ahead, but I want to get this out of the way in terms of strategy. You're looking at DJ Moore price really high up, and then we're going to get to McCaffrey here, which is just like the craziest price tag I think we've seen in a while here on showdown slates. Yeah. And then we're also talking about Sam Darnold. So just think about that from like a lineup construction perspective. Like how weird are these builds going to get? And we saw this kind of similar to the Green Bay matchup and the Detroit matchup, where you had to shove in all these really cheap guys and also get Aaron Jones in there, Devontae Adams. I know Devontae Adams didn't pan out as well as we thought he did, but
he finished fire.
Yeah, he did. And then also TJ Hawkinson was in there, who also crushed it on that slate. So think about that, guys, when constructing these lineups. It might make sense, you know, the pair Sam Darnold with the Christian McCaffrey, maybe a DJ Moore. Expect these guys to score some touchdowns. And it can make for some very interesting builds, because getting in some of these very cheap guys really does make sense, which is just, you know, I want to start out with that, because when we talk about some of these cheap guys, you guys are going to look at us like we're stupid. Like you have to play some of these cheap guys because they're going to make sense from a value perspective. But yeah, Sam Darnold, I think, has to almost be a cash lock, just given the game script, given how many times he passed the freaking Christian McCaffrey. It's freaking crazy to see his statistics. We'll look at it here in a second. But yeah, I think Sam Darnold is almost a must in cash and pretty much a lock in every other contest. I can only expect him to score a lot of points in this game.
Matt, just to put it into perspective for you real quick, if you do want to put Christian McCaffrey in your captain spot, you pair that with DJ Moore and Sam Darnold. I know. I'm just, you know, we're jumping the gun a little bit here. You would have 2,700 remaining flex players.
And you can do it. We have some intriguing options here a little bit later on the slate. But yeah, let's move over to Christian McCaffrey and the gang here. 55. point. All right, play him. Now, in the captain spot, like you just said, it'll make for a very contrarian captain, but his previous 2 games, I mean, he scored 24.7, 27.7. Think about that on not only on the main slate, like he's pretty close to making optimal based on the price tag there, but when you look at that from a showdown perspective, TJ, just putting up that many raw points, you have to make the optimal. I don't care what price tag you are. If you're scoring an average of 25, 26 points every single time, he's going to make the optimal. So we kind of dove into this conversation in our Discord chat. Will he make the optimal in the showdown? Yes, unless he gets injured. Okay, right. That's just how it's going to go. He's going to be the highest scoring player. Him or DJ Moore, in my opinion, have the most upside. So yes, I do think he's going to be a cash lock. In the captain spot, I think it's really going to come down to lineup construction. I don't think you need him in the captain spot. If one of his players from his team do outscore him, and even Sam Darnold himself. But yeah, I do think he's a cash lock. Going over to some of these other players here, we have Hubbard and we also have Royce Freeman. They're not really that involved in the offense. What's your take here on taking a stab? Because again, we do need some cheap guys here on either one of these running backs.
Yeah, no interest. We haven't even seen Royce Freeman in these first 2 games. Hubbard's had 8 carries, and that was against the Saints when, Panthers were up big. So nope, just Christian McCaffrey. Make sure he's in your lineup, whether you're putting him in your flex or if you have a unique build that you want to put him in captain, go from there. But yes, Christian McCaffrey, the only running back from Carolina. No, do not.
The only time when I would consider these guys in the game script where this makes sense is if these guys go up big. It is an 8-point spread and they rely on somebody like Hubbard or Freeman, but I don't think it makes sense regardless. I mean,
3,200, even if he's getting
right.
work,
Yeah, I was about to say he still has to get to like 6 points or so. Yeah, so he had to steal a touchdown or get 60 yards for that really to make sense in that spot. Not really too much interest here in either one of those running backs. Switching over to the wide receiver position, this gets very interesting. We've seen a quiet first 2 games here from Robbie Anderson, but with DJ Moore, we haven't. He's been pretty consistent here. 35.7% ownership is what he's showing. My idiot self faded him last game because I thought New Orleans would, contain him. Nope, not the case at all here. 11 targets, 8 receptions, and then also 8 targets, 6 receptions in his past 2 games here. Showing pretty high ownership. I'm just going to go down the list here. Robbie Anderson, also 29.4% ownership, which is pretty decent. Teetering on that cash/GPP category. And then Terrence Marshall Jr. At 24.3% ownership. So let me just ask you this, TJ. Who are you considering from these wide receivers given their price tags?
Yeah, I mean, DJ Moore's the guy to have on that. He's been on the field for the most offensive snaps so far. He is Sam Darnold's number 1 option there. He's getting 19 targets on 72 routes. Robbie Anderson's been a pretty big disappointment thus far since Sam Darnold coming over. He's run 68 routes, only 8 targets. Terrace Marshall's run 47 routes and has 1 more target than Robbie. So I think for me, cash, DJ Moore, he's the guy that you want to go to. Robbie Anderson next. I feel like that's kind of an awkward price tag for him.
It is
for a really good GPP play, but if you're trying to play cash, like I don't necessary. If you're trying to get Darnold, McCaffrey, and DJ Moore, I'd rather go down to a Terrace Marshall at 4,000. Again, not on the field as much as Robbie Anderson. Obviously, so far on the year, Robbie Anderson's played 77% of offensive snaps, opposed to Terrace Marshall at 52% of the offensive snaps, but has been targeted more when he has been running routes in 5 less routes than Robbie Anderson has run. So DJ Moore is my main priority. If I'm going anywhere after that, it's probably Marshall. But yeah, I think Robbie Anderson is, I think he's on an island.
Yeah, and Zylstra, we got to talk about him. And yes, we did pronounce that correctly for anybody wondering. $4,600, showing no ownership. He did steal away a touchdown. Any interest there?
No.
Yeah, just strictly big GPPs because he's really not on the field that often. I'm going to pull it up real quick. Zylstra, 18.6 is the average, and he played 19 and 18, so he's been pretty consistently not playing snaps the first 2 games. All right, next on the list here, we have the tight end picture. I know you have the stats directly in front of you. I'm going to give you a second to look at those because I don't have them in front of me. Dan Arnold at 12.9%, 4.8K is relatively cheap, but also Ian Thomas at $2,000. Are you considering either one of these tight ends? What does their picture look like? Because I just had the snap counts here in front of me, TJ, and you painted a better picture before we went live here. Ian Thomas played 62.1% of team snaps, which stood out to me, and then Dan Arnold only played 39.3. But how does that look in terms of routes ran, all that good stuff?
Yeah, so in terms of Ian Thomas here, he's been on the field for 43 pass attempts that Sam Darnold has attempted. He's run routes on 25 of them. So in 16 of them, he's been out there just for blocking purposes. He has 4 targets, opposed to Dan Arnold, who has 7 total targets on 39 routes run. And he's run routes on 39 of 41 pass attempts. So I think more offensively, your play is Dan Arnold. I think Ian Thomas is more of the blocking tight end. That's something that we have seen in the past year from Carolina. So no, Matt, I don't really have too much interest in either of these guys. Again, I think Dan Arnold makes for a pretty interesting price tag at 4,800, especially where we have some really high price guys we want to get to. And there's way better, cheaper options on the side that we'll get to as well. So I'm not making either of these guys a necessity, being Dan Arnold.
I don't hate them, but again, you're looking at what, $2,700 left over for some of these players. And the $2,000 price tag is more intriguing. But like you said, there's some better plays on the slate, at least for just sheer upside. Switching over to the kicker, we'll get this out of the way real quick. Gonzalez is definitely my preferred kicker if I had to choose between the 2 kickers on the slate, just because game script does play in his favor. They're supposed to score more points and be in field goal range more often than not. 10.7% if you're looking for a cheaper guy. Again, it's slightly above that $2,700 average that we were looking at earlier, but still, if you're looking for a cheap option, don't mind that. And let's talk about this defense. So this is a slate where you can consider the defense, not because Carolina's defense is so good, it's because Houston's offense is going to be really bad in this game, specifically with Mills at quarterback. They're only projected to score 17.5 points. Now, their price tag scares me. 6.2K. We haven't seen an optimal, at least on showdowns, have a defense here. Does this make sense, TJ, at this price tag for cash? You're showing 20.4% ownership here at the defense.
Yeah, it's a tough sell at $6,200, Matt. Obviously, the defense
That's 12 points.
has been spectacular. They've given up a league least. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, I think so. I think you said that right.
League least 380 total yards in 2 games. They've played the Jets and they've played the Saints. Saints obviously game against the Packers and then a big letdown against Carolina. So defenses look fantastic. Both games at home, now traveling to Houston on a short week. Maybe something to take into consideration there. I mean, I think you can go to them. I just don't know what the build is going to look like if you're playing the Panthers D. I think 200 for a pretty price tag.
Yeah.
Even though the backup is going for Houston. So if you're landing on that, Matt, as a last piece, I don't hate it, but I don't know if I'm making them a necessity for me. They could be in for a big day, just given what we've seen from the first 2 games out of the Panthers, like I said, Jets against.
The big question is, can they make the optimal? I think my answer to that is yes, they definitely can. I would include them in the player pool. As much as I hate playing defenses, I think they are definitely in play here, specifically for this slate. All right, switching over to the Houston side, we're going to talk about this quarterback here with Davis Mills, 34.3%. Now, he is a quarterback. He's going to be out there the most often out of all offensive players, hopefully. 8.4K, TJ. That's a very cheap price tag. Yeah. Are you considering him for cash?
I mean, you have to. He's a quarterback. It's a tough sell.
It is.
Looked pretty shaky when he came into Cleveland. 8 for 8, threw a touchdown, threw a pick, only 102 yards. I'd probably rather play Deshaun Watson at 6K, Matt, over Davis Mills at 8,400. I think Deshaun might get more points with 0.
Yeah,
but
honestly
no,
good.
I mean, kind of stinks that Tyrod Taylor's out because 9,800, I kind of did like that price tag if he was good to go. But, you know, obviously the hamstring injury hindering him there. He's going to be out for a little bit. I don't trust. I don't know. What is your thought process when it comes to Davis Mills? Because, Matt, he's in here for at least 4 weeks, technically. Tyrod Taylor is out until at least week 6. So Davis Mills, we're going to see him on the slates moving forward. I don't know if
I don't like him for cash. Given the upside from the other players that we talked about, I think they're safer on the Panthers side. Again, you're talking about DJ Moore. He only has to catch, a couple balls here and there. I think he literally can outscore Davis Mills here. I think Davis Mills' upside is like 12 points if I had to really pin it on that. I just don't like it. I do like him for GPPs. What's that? 15?
15. Yeah, I think that's his upside, yeah.
I think they can win this game. I mean, never count them out. Houston hasn't looked horrible out the gates, even with Davis Mills. So I do like him for GPPs, but for cash, I just don't think I'm going to land on them in terms of lineup construction, TJ, for all the reasons that we've already talked about. I think your safe options are the ones we've already talked about with Darnold, with McCaffrey, and with Moore. I really do. I think those guys are just straight up safer at their price tag. But yeah, I would consider him for GPPs. I think he's going to provide great leverage, TJ, and if the game script goes in the Texans' favor, with the wide receivers we're going to talk about here in a little bit, then yeah, I do like him for GPPs. But switching over to the running back picture here, Mark Ingram, David Johnson, Rex Burkhead, Lindsey, Scotty Phillips we won't talk about, but these top 4 have all been utilized in some way, shape, or form here through the first 2 games, and their price tags are very cheap, TJ. So I will start out by saying I like these guys for GPPs depending on how the game script kind of plays out. One guy that stands out to me in terms of this game script here is going to be David Johnson because he's primarily used for the passing. Also Philip Lindsay. I guess you can throw Rex Burkhead in there over Mark Ingram in my opinion. Mark Ingram was utilized a lot because he played a high school defense in the very first game. We're not going to talk about it, but these last 3, are you considering for cash, TJ?
It's certainly tough, Matt. I think what your synopsis is pretty accurate there. If you're thinking from the standpoint that Carolina is going to get out to a lead, we're going to probably see less of Mark Ingram and more of those pass catching backs. So what we've seen so far with this offense, definitely a running back committee here. Mark Ingram in 2 games has played 40% of the offensive snaps. David Johnson at 34.5%, Philip Lindsay at 24.5%, and then Rex Burkhead all the way down there at 5.1%. And we've also, in terms of rushing attempts, Mark Ingram with 40, Philip Lindsay with 13, David Johnson with 9, and Rex Burkhead with. So if by some divine miracle you think Houston can get a lead, you're going to see a lot of Mark Ingram getting. So if you want to try to get different in tournaments, Matt, I think it makes for a really good play. But if you're following game script and you think that Carolina is going to get out to a lead, you're going to see David Johnson, you're going to see Philip Lindsay. You could even get a dose of Rex Burkhead depending on what kind of game script they use.
Right.
So yeah, I don't hate landing on those guys. They're awkward price tags. I don't know if I trust snap counts that we're going to see be pretty evenly rated between the 3 or 4. So it's definitely a shit show when it comes to these Houston backs. I like them more for tournaments than I would for cash.
I agree. I'm not considering these guys for cash, but based on everything that you just said, I don't hate Rex Burkhead at $200 as a last piece is specifically for your lineup construction. If you're having to pay it for somebody in that mid-range that you're trying to get to, again, $2,700 is the average that we already talked about.
Got a catch in his first 2 games.
Right. And like I said,
he didn't even play last
week. His first game. We were kind of joking about this. He crushed value in the first game. You have to get 0.4 points to really hit that value for a $200 price tag. I know I joke about that, but as a last piece, again, just on the sole purpose that he's $200, I don't hate him as a last piece specifically with McCaffrey in your captain spot. So I will say that. But I love these wide receivers at their price tags. Again, I only like them because of their value. I'm not saying they have tremendous upside. I'm talking about Conley, I'm talking about Roberts, and possibly even Anthony Miller here next on the board. Brandon Cooks, let's talk about him because he is this team when it comes to the wide receiver core here. $10,000. Keep in mind, primarily Tyrod Taylor was throwing to him those first 2 games. 14 targets, 7 targets against the Jaguars. TJ, are you considering Brandon Cooks over the wide receivers on the Carolina side?
No.
Okay. Why is that? Even though he's been so dependent, he's been very, what's that? Davis Mills. Okay. I'm just making sure. Just making sure we're on the same page here. So he's still showing 32.1%, and I do think he can still get those targets. Now, will they be good targets? Will he actually turn them into something? That is another good question. I do think he's a better GPP option. I don't think I'm going to be landing on him because of that price tag. Let's talk about some of these other wide receivers at their price tag here. Chris Conley, $1,600. We saw this again in the Detroit matchup where Cephas caught that long bomb right off the rip. I knew he was going to break this late. He ended up catching a touchdown on that exact same drive. And sure enough, he was in the optimal. At $1,600, it's reminding me of that Cephas play. Very dependent. He's going to have to be very dependent here, Davis Mills, on some of these other wide receivers because Brandon Cooks is probably going to be the first guy they're going to hone in on here on the Carolina side. $1,600, TJ. Is he worth it in cash?
Yeah, Matt. So just a quick tidbit before we talk about Chris Conley. When Mills came in for Tyrod Taylor at halftime there against Cleveland, he had 18 pass attempts, 9 of them were so. Brandon Cooks is going to continue.
Good decision.
Targets, but I just think the 10K price tag is.
Yeah.
But Chris Conley, I think he makes sense for what we're trying to build here with those expensive Carolina guys. $100. He's been on the field the second most behind Brandon Cooks so far through 2 weeks, 3% of offense.
Still isn't that much.
Right, but we have no Nico Collins now, and we have no Danny Amendola as well. So both of those guys out. So somebody else is going to need to be on the field on the other side of Brandon Cooks, and I would assume that would be Chris Conley. So yeah, $1,600. I do like him for cash. I think he's going to be chalky. 28% ownership, Matt. So I think you can use him for sure.
Right. And then there's Andre Roberts and Anthony Miller. So I guess you can kind of throw them into the same sentence because we don't really know how much you're going to play. But Andre Roberts played 36% of the snaps last game. So we can assume that he's going to be third behind those guys or close to it. Anyway. Another thing you have to think about, TJ, is game script's going to play in these guys' favor. They should be out more often than not. So that's something else. That's another thing I really like here. Chris Conley, $1,600. Andre Roberts, $600. That's a combined total of $2,200, TJ. I'm just saying. So if you guys can already guess where we're going with this. Really like those guys to kind of shove into your lineup to make sure you get all of that stud play up at the very top there with the Carolina Panthers. Anthony Miller, $1,000. We can only assume he's also going to be on the field for some amount of time at $1,000, more for GPPs. But I do like the $600 price tag so much on Andre Roberts and Chris Conley at $1,600. TJ, I think they're cash locks, honestly, or close to it, depending on how your lineup kind of ends up.
Yeah, I think you go Andre Roberts over Anthony Miller now, unless we hear any news. Just because we haven't seen Anthony Miller yet this year. We've seen Andre Roberts. Expect him to be the wide receiver 3 there with Amendola and Nico Collins out. But yeah, I think you're locking in Chris Conley, Matt, and then Andre Roberts.
There you go. Let's switch over to the tight end picture here. We have Pharaoh Brown, who technically was out on the field the most behind Brandon Cooks. Whether it was for passing, blocking, doesn't really matter. He's out on the field the most. And then also Akins was right behind him at 61.2%. I think you have some stats, but keep in mind, both these guys are also relatively cheap at $2,600 and $2,200. So that's something we like to see, especially when we're looking in that $2,700 range. TJ, who do you like, if you do, for cash?
Yeah, I'd probably go with Pharaoh Brown here just because terms of target per routes run. So he's been in there for 40 of, I'll say Tyrod Taylor dropbacks, and I guess we'll add Davis Mills in there. He's run routes on 29 of them, and he's been targeted. So, Davis Mills did throw to Akins, I think 3 times of his 18 attempts as well. So something to keep in mind there, Matt. But yeah, I think it's take your pick here with these Houston tight ends. I would prefer Pharaoh Brown, but if we're talking about the builds that we had going with those cheap wide receivers, I just don't know if I'm going to be getting in a cash lineup. I think they do share some upside in tournaments, though, just because of game script and what we...
I completely agree with that. Again, it's going to all come down to the build here. Let's now talk about the kicker. Sly, I think, is just a GPP play. Could land on him for a double kicker if you wanted to. That could also play in your favor. Could be a kicking type of game. Defense, I would not consider, honestly. Yeah, $3,000 does seem cheap, but again, you guys that watch this channel know how much I hate playing defenses and showdowns. Let's now switch over to the Prize Picks board here. We have, well, first of all, we give away Prize Picks plays every single video. If you guys haven't signed up for Prize Picks, it supports the channel. You enter code using DGF for 100% matchup to $100 for you guys as well. You simply hit the over or under on any fantasy point projection, on any receiving prop, rushing prop, passing prop, it does not matter. So let me hear it, TJ. Who's your favorite Prize pick for this slate?
I think I'm going to go with DJ Moore over 66.5 receiving yards. If this game can stay somewhat competitive and we see Carolina throwing into the second half, Sam Darnold will look for DJ Moore downfield. He's obviously the number 1 target here. They've had some really good rapport over these first 2 games, and a half receiving yards is a little bit too low for DJ Moore. Not scared off by Robbie Anderson or Terrace Marshall. If anything, I'd be most scared of Christian McCaffrey taking away looks from DJ Moore. Yeah, but I think DJ Moore over 66.5 is a really good.
I think Chris Conley 26.5 is an auto lock in my opinion. I think he's going to be out there for 60+% of the plays, if not more. Just volume, guys. He's going to be out on the field, and that just doesn't make any sense at 26.5. I honestly think that's
that in right now.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest free score.
Chris Conley over. I just put it in.
It kind of reminds me of Diami Brown. His projection was so low a couple slates ago where it just didn't make any sense. Yeah. I think Chris Conley makes even more sense. I get the quarterback throwing to him is not that good, but 26.5, guys, you just have to exist. You have to catch a ball or two. But that's it, guys. That'll wrap up our video. Hopefully you did enjoy this content. If you did, please do hit that subscription button, notification bell, and of course, smash that like button for all of our future NFL Showdown content. With all that being said, have a great rest of your night. Let's cash.
Love you guys. Good luck.